Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That's the podcast about itself, ourselves, and the self in general. My name is Ty. I'm going to be your host, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Distance, right over there. So tonight we have an interesting topic. I'm pretty excited about this. I did not know a lot about this topic before I started looking into it for the I guess like the review for this episode. I don't know what the preparations, the notes I took for this episode, I guess, was kind of my first real look into this topic. Tonight we are going to be discussing nihilism. So yeah, Distance, you start us off. I guess this is more in your wheelhouse. It was your decision to talk about this. So what are we doing here tonight?
I don't know. It's debatable whether or not there's a reason or a purpose for any of it, though.
That was pretty meta. I liked that.
Yeah, I liked it too. Hence the name. Yeah. We are the Metacast.
Oh man, that was good.
So yeah, so actually, if I'm honest with you, like, I understood certain parts and types of nihilism before, but having a sort of like brush up, I guess, sort of helped me to understand some other things about it I wasn't quite aware of or familiar with.
Gotcha.
That nihilism is actually a little more complex. There's a lot of like super confusing schools of thought that are kind of like subtypes or branches of nihilism. A few of which I still don't understand, I'm pretty sure. So I'm hoping you paid more attention to the ones that I was like, this is confusing, I'm done.
Maybe. I mean, basically what I did is, like, when my first look in, I discovered there are 4 types of nihilism. And then right after learning that, I got a text from you that we were focusing on one of those 4. So I kind of, narrowed my focus to really only researching that branch and not really looking into a lot about the other 3. But of course, in any reading I did, they kind of popped up a little bit, but.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're going to see a little bit of each of them kind of mentioned in each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And a few of them are a little more ridiculous than others. But they're all a bit absurd. Did you see what I did there?
Well, yeah, because I also did run into eventually absurdism.
Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping that was a joke. That
yeah, we'll have to touch on that probably too, because it's kind of absurdism is, like, there's a different definition for absurd for philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, versus colloquially, it just means something silly. But at the same time, absurdism in itself is kind of absurd by like normal language or typical American English, I guess. So I guess. Do you want to start with, like, I guess just going over the definition of pure nihilism, just nihilism by itself without any other words in front of it?
Sure, yeah. So what I ran into, I guess, like, well, I didn't really, I mean, the definition seemed to change depending on who was doing the defining, but like the etymology is that, I guess it's really pronounced nihil, the root, but it's nothing. So it's like, it is nothingism, right?
More or less. And I mean, my understanding is that the linguistics of it are sort of focused on the fact of meaning, that there isn't anything intrinsically meaningful about existence or the universe.
Yes,
and but it's sort of pointless to try to construct some kind of meaning in the meaninglessness of it all.
See, that I never got to. I got that there was like a general attitude of denial or negation of meaning, and meaning as in purpose, not just the actual like textbook meaning. Yeah. But yeah, so there's no like intrinsic purpose to life or existence or whatever. But I did not find people defending that there was no point to try to add meaning, because I did see a lot of people going into that.
Yeah, I think cosmic nihilism is more the one that's going to tell you that there's no reason for any of it, and you should just wait for, what was it? In the words of Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, what did he say? Like, await the universe heat death or whatever. I forget what he says, but like, that's more of like the cosmic nihilism is more the one where it's like there is nothing, who gives a shit, like absolutely nothing matters. But yeah, that's the thing that's confusing about it, is that there's different sort of like you said, there's different definitions of it depending upon who's defining it. So it's relatively loose, I think. But when you start to sort of zero in on the other types, then I think there's a little more like kind of exact or specific definitions of what it is that you're looking at.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. See, that's the main I forget how many different definitions I looked at, but the things they shared in common among what seemed like each of them was a general attitude of denial or negation of purpose in whatever then you're talking about, which normally, so as we started to touch on, the 4 types of nihilism that I came across, I guess, are moral nihilism, epistemological, oh my god, how do you pronounce this word? Is it epistemological or
It's pronounced homogenous. No,
epistemological nihilism. There we go. So if I can't pronounce the word,
feminine, it's shit,
dude.
Who
do
invents
that.
These words.
Oh my god, I do that with like, I'm gonna say it correctly this time. Anonymity. I can't ever say that word correctly.
Look at you.
I did it, but like I try to start it with anonymous because I know that's the root. I'm like anonymous. Hold on, anonymity, and I live in a sea.
Are you talking about that sea creature?
Yes, yeah. Living in anonymity. All right. So, anyways, moral nihilism, epistemological nihilism, cosmic nihilism, and existential nihilism. And from what I gather, most people, when you're just using the term nihilism naked with nothing in front of it, you're basically talking about existential nihilism in a less specific way. So I think for the purpose of this conversation, that's what we're going to focus on is existential nihilism, which then coupled together with what we just defined nihilism to be, so it's basically a general attitude of denial or negation of inherent purpose in existence. You're basically saying that there is no inherent purpose to our existence.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the general idea of existential nihilism. So the thing that I thought was kind of odd is that it's because the way that the word existential like is defined is sort of like, you know, the state. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna look up existential by itself. So trying to define it by myself. So existential would, in this case, we mean nihilism relating to existence.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've found is that some people think of existential nihilism as a cross between existentialism and nihilism.
See, yeah, I wondered because I ran into a lot about existentialism while looking this up. Yeah.
So the thing, a lot of people view existentialism as like a solution to nihilism, but they're almost like one and the same.
Yeah, I was having trouble determining the actual difference between them. I was struggling with that.
Yeah. So I guess when we say existential nihilism, in this case, we're talking about, you know, nihilism as relates to like sort of the state of existence for a human, that's just strictly related to us.
Mm-hmm.
But existentialism is more or less that, like the whole idea that everybody had an essence and that you were born with that essence. And I think it's a Greek thing, actually. And, you know, that essence determines who you are, what you do, and blah, 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 blah. But existentialism is like the idea that you exist and then you sort of create your essence for your purpose.
It's Sartre, I guess, is the guy's name that came up with the existence precedes essence. Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, one of those funny names.
Sartre? Yeah, it's Sartre is how it's spelled.
Is it Nietzsche or Nietzsche? Is it Mussolini or Mussolini? I'm just kidding. No one says his name any differently. Or is it the Big Lebowski?
Dude,
that's another problem. Like that's another misconception, is because of that movie. The nihilist Lebowski.
Well, yeah, because
you
I mean,
believe in nothing.
yeah, exactly. In that movie, nihilist basically meant you believe in nothing, right? Which we talked about after mentioning The Big Lebowski. There's an Evergreen Terrace song called "No Donnie, Those Men Are Nihilists," which is based off of a line from The Big Lebowski. And even in that song, there's a lyric which it's like "Kiss your life goodbye, you believe in nothing." So I think I grew up a long time thinking that nihilism was actually the belief in nothing.
Yeah,
Which,
me too.
yeah, it doesn't seem to be at all, basically. I mean, I guess like if you are a true cosmic nihilist, you may also follow that belief, but I don't think it's inherent to cosmic nihilism, right? Like it's kind of its own thing. But
yeah, I mean, I think so. I guess we probably should discuss too. Uh, are we nihilists, and how far are we? How far would we go, each of us, in our nihilism, and what do we think about it, and what's our experience with it? I guess maybe thinking about because I mean, I would say, like, as a very young person, I was definitely a cosmic nihilist.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like I really, because of, and it was, some of it was seated in like miss is it pronounced misanthropy or misanthropy?
I think it's on the accents on the A. I think it's misanthropy. I'm not 100% sure on that.
So I had I can say this word. I had a misanthropic viewpoint.
Okay.
And I think that that's sort of what a lot of it was based on, was because it wasn't necessarily that I just thought the humans sucked so bad.
Yeah.
That there was no reason for us.
Okay.
And that was a very, cynical, very angry sort of perspective. I mean, this is like in my teens.
Yeah.
And
it's probably, it's like almost a knee-jerk reaction to the situation you're in too, right? Like it didn't come from just actually sitting and contemplating existence. It probably came from peers treating you like shit, or seeing like hypocrisy in the world or something. Be like, no, fuck these people. I'm gonna believe this. But
yep, these people are dicks.
Yeah. Yep.
and so therefore there is no purpose because these people are dicks. It's a very like selfish, sort of self-centered idea.
It's a very Catcher in the Rye kind of mentality too, honestly.
Yes, I don't remember that book at all. I was gonna do that thing where I was pretending like I knew what you're talking about. Like, yes, I'm so well read. I just explain that. I don't understand.
Well, the main character, Holden Caulfield, is like Catcher in the Rye. I love it as a piece of media because you can read it at different points in your life and get something completely different from it. As like a young teen, you could be like, yeah, this Holden guy is badass. He's like, he doesn't, put up with people being fake. He's his own dude. And then later as an adult, you can read it and be like, wow, this guy's a fucking asshole. And it's like, it's one of those things where depending on how you see the character, you're going to get something different from it. But basically, like throughout the book, he picks apart the hypocrisy that he sees in society and calls a lot of people phonies. And, it's just that kind of mentality of like thinking that like, okay, no, I understand what's really going on and everyone else is just faking it. Or
yeah, it's like I think it was in the Clockwork Orange. I'm not crazy, I'm just paying attention.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Kind of like that. And the thing that I've, at least my personal experience with sort of my ideas of it, because my grasp of nihilism is like that I didn't just stop at the idea that there's no intrinsic meaning or intrinsic purpose to human existence.
Okay.
I would try to go so far as to like state a whole bunch of premises for why that's true.
Okay.
And a lot of it was like really, like you're gonna die, and
yeah,
I'm gonna die, and the kids in our lives, even if we have some kind of impact on them, they're gonna die. And then at some point the sun is going to swell up into some superheated fireball and swallow up the world.
Which is all true. Yeah, these are all true.
And then eventually it's gonna fuse some freaking iron, and I don't know. Does our sun turn into a white dwarf? I can't remember. I think it's going to be one of the white dwarf ones. And then it's dim and it's black. And then at the end of it, it's like that one episode of Doctor Who where all the stars had burned out and then there's nothing, and that's that, and everything's dead. So because of that, nothing matters. Like those are all my premises for it.
Which everything is true up until because of that, nothing matters, right? Like everything else is just facts, but then like what you take from those facts is the interpretation of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and the worst little chasm, I guess is the word that you'll end up in with this discussion is I fucking hate it when I'm trying to talk to somebody about meaning, nihilism versus existentialism, and we get stuck in the what is meaning conversation. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is this a college dorm? Like, is anyone high? Are we high? Like, no, it just fuck. Why do we no? With the semantics. Sorry.
Well, but that is a tricky word, especially in this case, though, right? Because
well, you clarified it as being purpose in this case, right?
Yeah, and that's what I understand it to be, not just
Yeah.
Okay.
And that works, and it was a valuable part of this discussion. So I'm glad you said it that way.
Well, because it's the same thing. Like a lot of times, like if I've ever had conversations with people about like determinism or things like that, where it's like the word reason can be either a purpose for something or just a cause. Those are two very different things. If you believe something caused something, that doesn't mean that there's a constructed reason for it and that it's like part of a larger plan. It just means that it was a causal effect. And I think that like there's some words that like kind of have double meanings like that we use for multiple different things that can lead to confusion there. But
sounds like we're gonna need to do determinism. Let's just change the name of this to the Ism Cast.
So I mean, so that's okay. So what you basically started asking, I think through the research for this, I think I've determined. So I don't like to subscribe to an ism because I'd rather take a look at what I believe and say, okay, these maybe align with this, rather than saying, yes, I'm a this ism, which then other people will assume because I'm in that group, you believe X, Y, and Z. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, I would never call myself a nihilist, but through the research of this, I've aligned that a lot of my beliefs seem to be deterministic, existential nihilist with absurdist tendencies. I think that's what I'm going to go with.
If you're listening on Apple or Google or Spotify, I just did the mind blown thing in case you couldn't tell by the sound effects. Just so you know, my head's exploded. So wait, hold on. I need to write all of that down. So
well,
can you just type that in the chat so
I can see it? I got you. Yeah.
Like okay. That was a lot.
The tendencies part is just kind of a joke.
Deterministic existential nihilist with absurdist tendencies. Yeah, well, I think I get the joke, because that's the funny thing about absurdism is that it is in a lot of ways a joke. And there's actually like there's types of comedy that are considered absurd.
Yeah.
Do you know Hans Taewoon?
Yeah.
Oh, that guy's so funny. He's so funny. With the sock and the candy bar. Hey, Ronnie. But I don't know how to spell Taewoon, but if you
I have no idea either.
If you guys get a chance, you should check him out. Hans Taewoon is pretty hilarious. So okay, deterministic, and I got to remember exactly what determinism means. This is a freaking
that's a complete
shut up happy.
That's a complete separate thing. That's because I don't believe in free will. I believe, I mean, that really has nothing to do with this discussion, but like, I'm not someone that believes in free will. I believe in determinism. So that's like, that's just prefaced with that. But as far as like for this, I do think that a lot of my beliefs align with existential nihilism. However, I don't think it's a negative thing. I think that there is, and I've come across people even using the term of like optimistic nihilism, where I don't, like, just like you were saying, like, you were talking about a bunch of facts of like, okay, yeah, eventually we're going to die. Everyone we know is going to die. Humanity's probably going to die. The sun's going to blow up. Like, those are all facts. Whether or not you take that in a pessimistic direction is your interpretation of those. And I think that a lot of what existential nihilism has to say is just true, or I believe it to be true, but I don't think that it necessarily means that I need to behave or act in a certain way that is looked at or thought of as negative. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, I guess the major reason why I think a lot of people think of it as negative is that there's a lot of a lot of people that subscribe to religious views that include an afterlife.
Yes.
And I think that the idea that they won't exist one day is a very negative thing to those individuals.
True.
And that though these are things that we sort of regard as truths, even those things being the truth to them is pessimistic, because there's an option. You could believe in something later, even though that's at this time and place a pretty unlikely idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's part of the reason why people view it as negative. That death itself, like we've talked about on here before, death itself is a very taboo subject. So like it's weird. Like I'll reminisce about memories about like old friends,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll just at the end of the sentence be like, yeah, but she's a bit dead now. And
Yeah.
to me, it's like just just the truth, and it's
Mm-hmm.
weird how uncomfortable people get with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, every mention of death is a subtle reminder of your own mortality, right? So, like, it is for a almost like natural human reason. It is like an uncomfortable subject, but it is something that, I mean, like we talked about in the death episode, I think we all need to be a little more comfortable talking about, and I think like even just
Yeah.
situations like that, being able to kind of carelessly throw that out there, I don't think that's a bad thing. It may make people uncomfortable, but I think the more stuff like that is done, maybe the more we just accept that as, yeah, it's part of life. It's
Yeah.
the last thing you'll ever do is die, right?
Yeah. Well, in theory, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'll accept that as truth, but other people might not.
Yeah.
I think that's true. It was actually kind of funny because I was talking when my nephew was, I think he was 7, maybe.
Okay.
I was talking to him about things that happened before he was born. And he kind of sat there with his mouth hanging open. I was like, oh, sorry, bud. I guess a 7-year-old's ego can't handle the idea of not existing.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, more confused. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was just like, it's something that you can't even wrap your head around, because it's like, why does anything matter if I'm not here?
Exactly. Yeah. That's the
Like,
whole
what
idea. Like when
is?
you close your eyes, the
Yeah,
world just kind of goes away, right? It's only there
yeah.
when you're observing it.
There's even branches of nihilism, like I think it's metaphysical nihilism,
Mm.
that there's like no objects, and objects don't exist, and empirical reality is an illusion. And it's so funny because there's different types of nihilism that play with the idea of meaninglessness.
Yeah. Yeah.
They try to make things mean even less and less and less. And like, well, I think there's a certain, well, I guess, could you kind of go into a little more, what are the positive ideas that you have related to nihilism?
Well, it's like so what I think the truth is that I think that there is no inherent purpose to our existence. Um it may just be like my agnostic beliefs, I guess, that lead me there, but I think that, our existence, life, the universe, I think it happened. I don't think that there was an like a design or a plan for it. So I think that it is like, for lack of a better term, I think that there is no inherent purpose. However, I think the opportunity then comes that you can find your own purpose in what you want to do with your life, or what you end up doing. That that you have like a personal meaning that you can find, but it's not. It's the I think a good example that came to my mind was the very original version of Minecraft. That game, there was no purpose. There's no end game. There's no, you're just dropped into a sandbox world, and you can do what you want. You can chop down trees. You can build a house, have fun, do what you want. I picture the universe kind of like that kind of sandbox environment where there's no end game design. There's no scoreboard. There's no like, okay, go and reach this level and then do this with your life, and then you'll consider, that you've achieved the purpose. It's just, here's a sandbox environment. Find a purpose to do while you have your time here. And that, I like that. I can see that as actually optimistic.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I think that when you look at because the funny thing is that I think that one of the beginning premises of existentialism is nihilism,
Mm-hmm.
that there isn't really any inherent meaning, and that's one thing that I think is nice, I guess, or a luxury that people that believe in a certain some religions have, is that they believe that there has been a purpose for them,
Yes.
given to them by a god.
Yep.
um, and hey, lucky them. That probably makes things a lot easier, but
Maybe that's also
uh,
a lot of pressure, right? If you feel
yeah,
like from birth there's something you need to live up to, that this divine being is like destined you to
yeah.
do, like.
Well, I mean, take Western Christians, take very specifically American Christians. There's
Mm-hmm.
as many breeds of those as there are nihilists.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's lots of different ways in which people interpret those things, and some people are. If you're an anxious person, you'll be an anxious Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've actually. I talk about religion a lot more than you'd expect most people to, especially like in the workplace, because I work generally with people that are capable of having conversations about stuff like this without getting pissed off.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
to mention, like, I'm not a dick about it, so they don't get angry.
Which that's
Um,
pretty necessary for the workplace. You usually don't want to have the religion talks there, right?
but yeah, that's the thing though. Is like if you look at religious people in particular, like there's or Christians in the U.S. There's some that the more intellectual ones are way into scripture and reading and interpreting, and you'll
Yeah.
see the really anxious ones are like way into like being terrified they're going to hell because they're doing bad shit all the time. And then the narcissistic ones will be like, yeah, I make shitloads of money because God wanted me to. Things like that. I'm
Yeah.
just using the money thing as an example, and that's
Well,
not
I've
necessarily a
heard
coworkers.
like
That's just
evangelists
people.
say that, where it's like, God wants me to have a new private jet. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, I forget those two guys. They're on the 700 Club. They call the plane a tube of demons.
Wow.
I'm sorry, it's so ridiculous.
It is, yeah.
Um,
It's
so
absurd.
it is. Yeah, it's. I was gonna say that, but I was like, have we played it? No, we haven't. We haven't played it out. Ty's still saying it. We're still saying it. So yeah, and I think that. So if you noticed the other day when we were sort of texting about this,
Mhm.
I used the term irresponsible.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Yeah, you seem to have
yes,
an opinion that um nihilism in itself is like almost inherently bad, or at least a
yeah.
bad worldview,
Well,
or can lead
it
to bad behavior or repercussions, I
it
guess, or.
it depends. It depends how far you put the meaninglessness. It
Okay.
depends how far you place the insignificance. It depends if you decide you want to pick up at the meaninglessness and then try to figure a meaning out, or
Mm-hmm.
if you so like absurdism's pretty hilarious because it's you're searching for meaning in a meaningless world, but you should still search for meaning even though the world is meaningless.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that uh absurdism to some degree, like I acknowledge the ridiculousness of the idea of searching for a purpose and a universe that doesn't seem to have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the common ideas is that, okay, Milky Way galaxy, was it 65 million light years or some shit, maybe more than that.
Like its
Massive,
diameter?
massive,
I thought it was just a couple
massive,
100,000.
massive. Maybe it's a couple 100,000. I can't remember. It's a
Yeah,
shitload of light years. Hold
105,000
on.
light years diameter.
705,000 light years. Can you look up the theoretical like distance like between the edge of our solar system and the other edge of our solar system?
Oh, just like solar
Yeah, I say
system?
theoretical because it's like orbits.
Yeah.
So even
Um.
if you compare the size of the galaxy to the whole fucking solar system we live in, the solar system's still a speck.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So then if the solar system's a speck, then the planet's an even smaller speck, and the continents are even smaller specks than that, and the people are like basically gluons and quarks. Like
Yeah.
we're like nothing. We're the theoretical things that make up those subatomic particles. Like that's how tiny we are, maybe even smaller than that.
Well, exactly.
So,
The answer, like, I can't even give an answer in the same units because the solar system's so small they would never measure it in light years. You know what I mean? So it's like you're measuring the galaxy in light years, and the solar system is in miles. So it's like, all right, like
an E with a negative sign, and it's massive.
Yeah.
With scientific notation, I can't remember how that shit works. 10 to the negative something, I can't remember. 10e to the negative, what, I forget, whatever. Scientific notation, look it up. Also, would like to actually mention that that I sort of understand that there's a lot of things that we're going to say that will probably be debatable or incorrect. So I really want anybody that's watching us on Twitch or YouTube, feel free to correct us and tell us where we say stupid shit, because
please.
We're both novice nihilists.
Yeah. I'm a nihilist in training. I need someone to be my Sherpa of the mountain of nihilism. If anyone's willing to do that. We need
someone to teach us how meaningless what they're teaching is, because they have no meaning.
True.
So, because I think that's why cosmic nihilism is called cosmic nihilism, is because a lot of the strong arguments for it are that we're a tiny speck of nothingness and that it doesn't fucking matter. So I think that when the more insignificant and the more meaningless you believe things are, when I say irresponsible, I mean that it takes responsibility away from you, because if like talking yourself into insignificance is not clever. Like it's just not. It's hacky. It's ridiculous. And I think the thing that bothers me the most, because I've struggled with these ideas for a long time. When I had this idea that everything was meaningless and nothing mattered, and fun fact, Old Testament, there's a book that we call Ecclesiastes.
Yeah,
it's extremely nihilistic at the beginning. In fact, the first words are translated as "everything is meaningless, everything is completely meaningless." And there's actually a better translation. The Hebrew word's more better translated as vapor. Yeah. But I think that there was something about it that created this arrogance in me.
Well, see, I want to ask a question before we get too far from it, because you tend to immediately jump from meaningless, which I consider just purposeless, to then that it's there's no value either. You know what I mean? Which I guess some people could see those as the same, but it's like, to me, just because there's not an inherent purpose doesn't mean that there's not value. And I think that might be the negative side of nihilism then, is if you feel like it's not only is there no purpose, but there's also no value, then that can start being, a dangerous rabbit hole to start to climb down, I guess. But
yeah, well, I would debate that purpose adds value to your life, and if you don't have purpose, then you don't have value.
Well, yeah, true. Yeah, but that's the opportunity of finding purpose, though, with like the personal meaning that you can discover in life. It's like, just because there's no inherent value or no inherent purpose doesn't mean that it doesn't exist for you to find.
Right. Yeah. And when you get to the point where, and see, that's the problem with nihilism, is that we might be talking about two different things here. Because I'm talking about the idea, or the offshoot, the subtype, or the branch of it where you take that meaninglessness to the ultimate level, that there is no purpose, no meaning, and that no consequences matter at all.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then it's a lot of the time that leads to hedonism, that leads to other behaviors that lack responsibility, because you don't believe that it really matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you get to the point where you take nihilism to the ultimate point of meaningless, purposeless, valueless vanity, like then it becomes an irresponsible thing.
Yeah.
Because you've taken responsibility away from yourself, because you've determined that nothing that you do matters.
Exactly.
But when you take nihilism at its core of there's no inherent meaning, and then you add sort of an existential element to it, that now you can find one, then I think of that as being a positive thing. And that meaning, or that purpose, can change from moment to moment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And from year to year, decade to decade, you know, as what you're good at changes, as what you're interested in changes, as what the people you know changes, then you can sort of allow that to be different. And, you know, this whole like somewhat fashionable idea of being present. I think that in the present moment, that's when you can create a purpose for yourself. And just because later on, there won't be a you, and there won't be the person you're interacting with, and in some ways, I mean, in absolute reality, there won't be an Earth. It doesn't mean that in that moment that it's completely that what you're doing doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
when I talk about nihilism as being like irresponsible and cynical, I'm only talking about going to the ultimate degree of meaninglessness and the ultimate degree of insignificance for human existence. And, you know, it's like, because the way I think of existentialism in particular is you exist for what appears to be no reason. And you probably should just kill yourself. But you won't. So since you won't, now figure something out.
Yeah, I like
you're here, figure it out.
I like Donald A. Crosby had a quote that is there is no justification for life, but also no reason not to live. I think that kind of sums that up, where it's like, yeah, there's not a meaning here, but there's also like, you know, we're already here. Why not do it, right? Like I'm already here. I'm gonna live this life. Like
the whole idea of the existential crisis, you know, that's something that's pretty recent, because it's something I need to figure out who it's by. I need to go into this dude's office I work with, go to his wall and look at the thing and see who it's by. It might even say unknown, but he has the quote, happiness is the ability to fret over whether or not you are happy.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you brought that up on a previous episode. I like that quote. Yeah.
So this whole idea of an existential crisis thing is pretty recent, because we're prosperous enough to where we can begin to fret about what purpose we actually have.
Exactly.
Whereas before, and I mean like many long times ago before, I mean, you know, like,
or I mean, right now for some people, depending on what part of the world they live in, right?
That's true. Yeah. Like if you're living in I mean, I'm speaking specifically about, you know, the country we inhabit, the region we inhabit. But yeah, I mean, like, there's plenty of places where your purpose is to survive.
Exactly. Yeah.
And whatever hardships it requires to do that, you just kind of do.
Yeah. Basically, happiness is a first world problem. It's like
yeah. You know, I am going to find. There's something that I think would actually be really fun to quote right now.
It's a lyric by Sublime. It says, "Lovin' is what I got."
Because you might get run over or you might get shot.
See, that's.
Did you see? I don't remember. It was one of the episodes of Rick and Morty where one of like the little bug guys that like tried to sort of fool him into the virtual reality thing is like, he's like, you know, we're all ignoring a clear solution here, and he just blows his brains out.
Yeah, the boss. Yeah, like, yeah, I do remember that. The boss is like sitting at his desk and just pulls the gun out. Yeah, that's fucking hilarious. That actually came up quite a bit in researching this, is the nihilism of both Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman. There was actually like a formal like scientific paper that was like going into the use of nihilism in both of those TV shows. I thought that was pretty interesting.
BoJack is, I don't know, like maybe I should watch BoJack Horseman some more, because like for me, most of what I see from him is self-loathing.
True, yeah, but he does, like, I mean, the video that I watched that summed it up was pointing to BoJack for more existential nihilism, and then Rick from Rick and Morty for more cosmic nihilism. And the I didn't, you know, take as many notes from that video as I probably should have, but he made good points though. It was pretty interesting.
Did I tell you about the converse? Okay, so I feel like this is relevant. Okay. I was at a good friend of ours' house with that friend's roommate. Actually, that friend I think is watching right now. Okay. And his roommate and I got into it about, I was accused of being a bit heavy-handed with another friend of ours who was going through some difficult stuff, and I kind of got upset about it and a little defensive. And I said, like, well, would you rather I was just being real with her. Like, would you rather I be dishonest?
Did you tell them to man up?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, actually, I might have. I was pretty drunk at that point. I might have. I don't think I did. So then our friend's roommate was like, I don't want to run away from stuff. I just want to sit here, have a good night, get high, drink some beer, watch some fucking TV. Like I don't want to worry about any of this shit. I don't want to fucking worry about all this crap. So they're like, oh, fine, whatever,
Yeah.
fine. And then we turn on Rick and Morty. I'm like, how are we just having a good time watching this? Like, this is throwing all of that awful shit in our faces right now.
It is and it isn't. That is the awesome thing about specific media like that, is you only get that from it if you want to, right? It's not super obvious unless you have a mind that's going to read into it and see that side of it. A lot of people can just watch that show and just laugh at it.
I mean, I'm finding it immediately extremely amusing, but it's because in that very moment, I'm also thinking about how hilariously relatable it is, because they address many crises that a lot of us go through in our lives. And it's really fun to take something so fucking terrible and make it funny.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I feel like it's not like sitting and watching a documentary about nihilism that would be, in your face, making you think these ideas. It's a subtle part of the art that only if your mind is willing to explore those ideas does it go there. Same thing with, like we talked about last week, the movie Joker. There are plenty of people that can watch that movie and just be like, yeah, that was entertaining, and not think about any of the deeper thought that is there if you want it to be, right?
Can we have one of them on the podcast? I need you to find one, and I want them to come on with us.
Oh,
I would be super excited to talk to somebody like that.
I'm sure I could find one. Someone would be like, man, that movie sucked. Batman wasn't in it.
Did you ever see the Chad sketches on Saturday Night Live?
No, I don't think I did.
Oh, they were pretty brilliant. Chad is one of the most oblivious, somewhat cavalier, terribly nonchalant people. It's a hilarious character. I forget the actor's name that plays him.
Oh my God. So Craig did just verify whenever I asked if you told him to man up. He said, yes, he fucking did. He said it over and over while he was wasted.
I didn't tell his roommate to man up.
Yeah.
I told
the person you were being heavy handed to. Yeah. You told him to man up.
Our self-identifying female friend to man up several times. Mainly because I thought it was comical.
That was immediately where my mind went to. You were like, all right, someone said I was being heavy-handed to someone who was struggling with something. You fucking told him to man up.
Okay. All right. So I didn't realize. I thought you were talking about his roommate when the other friend left. But no, the individual who, yes, I actually did tell that individual to man up several times.
Nailed it.
Mainly because I thought it would, I found it humorous at the time. Because I figured she would just roll her eyes at me a lot.
That's funny.
To be honest, I don't really, I can't really discern what her reaction was at the time.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So this is maybe a little weird, but I'm gonna go ahead and read something.
Okay.
It's from who is this? Middle Eastern author. It's a relatively old work. So here we go. And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Yet I'll tell you that not even well, it's gonna give it away who this book is by. If you can't tell already. Yeah, I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagan, well, he actually says that. For the pagans essentially means non-believers.
Yeah.
For the non-believers
infidels.
Run after. You can call. Well, maybe you can call them that. For the non-believers run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. I'm sure anybody that's Christian will like knows this. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So, like, I repeated that on purpose. So this is from the Christian Bible. This is from
what book is it?
Matisyahu 6, because his name's not really fucking Matthew, because it's the Middle East. Matisyahu, which would be Matthew's Hebrew name.
Yeah.
Matthew 6. It's interesting to me because this is almost a little Stoic in nature. Because the Stoics had this, they didn't necessarily, the Stoics don't necessarily have the idea that there's a God that's looking after them, but they sort of remove themselves from the worry of the thing they can't control.
Yeah,
and I think that the reason why I mentioned that each day has enough trouble of its own at the end is because when you got enough shit going on, you can't fucking worry about tomorrow. And you can't worry about why me and what is my purpose. It's like you just fucking survive. And it's the same thing, like, see how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. They're just kind of there.
Yeah.
You know, the chemical reactions are occurring, you know, the sun's shining on them, photosynthesis is occurring, and then at some point the seeds will leave them and then they'll go elsewhere. It's like, not the seed, the pollen. I meant the pollen.
Yeah.
Will leave them and then go elsewhere and fertilize other flowers, and they'll just kind of continue what they do. So it's interesting because you don't see other animals doing the same shit that we do with this kind of stuff, you know? Like, they don't fucking care. Like, they're just like, to them it's just survive. And maybe if things weren't quite so cushy for us, we wouldn't be having these struggles either. Our existential crisis would be solved by just don't get eaten and find enough food.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like I brought up the same thing the last time we talked about this, but I'd be interested in knowing if a lot of the, like, truly ancient languages had a word for depression or happy or things like that. Like, was that even an idea that existed, or was there no need to have a term for that because that is a new thing that we've kind of discovered over the past, couple hundred years, I guess? But
yeah, because I think that there's certain situations where it doesn't really matter if you're depressed.
Yeah.
Because if I'm like having a shit time and I'm a fucking dent on my couch sitting here watching BoJack Horseman on my couch over and over again. No, better yet, no, something more depressing than that. Watching Friends on my couch.
Depressing. Big Bang Theory. Go big, dude.
Oh,
that's really depressing.
Big Bang Theory?
Yes. All right, we're gonna have a debate soon. Big Bang Theory, is it trash or not? Okay,
I'm gonna say the thing that everybody says. Agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the nicest fuck you can give to anyone that disagrees with you. Dawson's Creek. We can both agree on that, right?
Do you know what the zip code is for Dawson's Creek?
Are you being serious?
90128 409 2304. All right, I'm so sorry. Let's just move on.
Is that a joke?
Yes, of course. It's the fucking theme song.
Wait, is it really?
I don't want to wait. 90128 409 2304. All right, just move on. I never made that joke. Let's pretend like that moment didn't happen.
We'll do a later podcast on tone deafness.
I could have turned on my autotune for that. I specifically did.
It's because I love Ty so much. That's why I give them this kinds of shit.
True.
But okay, so just sitting on like a knot on my couch, like a dent on my couch, whatever I said, watching reruns of Dawson's Creek, drowning myself in Haagen-Dazs and Orville Redenbacher's movie theater popcorn with an entire 12-pack of Milwaukee's Best. If this sounds oddly specific, don't worry about it. And then, someone intrudes in my apartment and I feel that my survival is threatened. I'm not really going to not feel like doing anything during that period of time. I'm going to just make it fucking work.
Exactly. Necessity will change your mental
Right.
state like that. Yeah.
So I think that maybe the fact that we're not required to act immediately in situations where we just don't have the opportunity or the time to be depressed, if that may have something to do with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that there's a biochemical process that's happening when you're in a situation that threatens your survival.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's hormones and neurotransmitters that are being released in the body that are making you act contrary to what we typically think of as being depressed.
Yep.
So, and I think that the other thing about like the pure idea of nihilism, that like where it's just kind of that there's no intrinsic meaning in the universe,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, by logic means that there's no meaning for us if there's no meaning for the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That I think doesn't help if you're shitty, if you're like feeling shitty, it doesn't help. But then there's the idea that, you know, well, just because there's not doesn't mean I can't find one.
Yeah.
So then that's where like the good part of it kind of comes in, where like the sort of existential side of it sort of takes over.
Mm-hmm.
When I say existential, I mean of the ism.
Yeah.
That there is something good about that. But I think that when you get caught up in the crisis of why me, why do I exist, and then you come to the conclusion that there's nothing and you leave it at that, that's just gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just like you said, it leads to, if you don't believe that life has any meaning or value, no one's life has any meaning or value, so why do I need to respect others? Or, you know, like, yeah, it's a rabbit hole that you can go down where eventually, I mean, I think at the end of it, you can completely defend treating anyone like absolute shit or killing people or anything, right? Because there's no actual value or meaning there. So yeah, I understand where you're going. That like,
because if there's no meaning for me, there's no meaning for them, and there's no meaning or value or purpose for anyone. So why preserve any of it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one misconception, and because I guess a lot of it is somewhat self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of nihilism, I typically think of cynicism.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily true, because nihilism doesn't necessarily have to include cynicism as part of its sort of ideas. And when I say cynicism, I mean specifically like the Greek idea, like general like distrust of others and their motives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no faith, no hope in the human species.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that there's like, people will always be motivated by ambition and selfish ambition, and greed and sex and whatever other sort of pursuits that they have that are completely self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea that nihilism is also synonymous or includes cynicism is like just not really true. Mainly, and the only reason why I've ever thought that is because like I have been, in the times where I have had a chiefly nihilistic perspective, I have also been quite cynical.
Gotcha. Yeah. It just so happened that they kind of aligned in your mind, but there's no there's nothing objective to either one that means they have to go hand in hand. Yeah.
I think to some degree in my younger years, like I was cynical. And so the idea that thinking that these people had no reason or purpose was somehow refreshing or comforting to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That makes sense.
God, I was real shitty about 17 years ago. Had some really fucked up ideas.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think we all did, man. I don't think it's anything.
People was so mean to me though.
Yeah, I do though, like the way that I look at it, at least the way it makes sense to me, it never crosses the gap to saying that others don't have value or anything like that, because to me it is it touches on areas that I believe are, you know, like areas that are basically agnostic. I don't think we can actually know anything about the purpose of the universe. I don't think that knowledge is obtainable from being inside the universe, basically. So we can come
Agreed.
I can come up with my personal belief or my personal ideas of what that is, the lack of, but I don't think that it is an objective truth that I've found. I think it's just my belief system, basically. And I'm a firm believer that my beliefs don't extend to other people. So I'm like, even though I may believe, like, even if I go down, hardcore nihilism where I 100% believe that there's no meaning or purpose or value in anything, it still doesn't extend past me onto other people's bodies or their personal belongings, because it's like I realize their belief could be completely different and I could be wrong. So it's like, I mean, it's the same thing with, it's like, just because I'm on a diet doesn't mean you can't have a donut. Just because I'm a nihilist doesn't mean that you don't have inherent belief or inherent meaning in your life.
That bacon's gonna kill you. I don't care. Go run a mile. I actually have found myself in the past being a dick about that, but I agree with you there. It's that I think that's another thing that when we were talking the other day about this, and that because I had sort of decided that nihilism wasn't necessarily valuable to me, that meant that it was somehow solved.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It was solved for me, like
exactly.
subjectively within my mind, it was solved. Not saying like everybody needs to do this or else. Well, I mean, to be fair, I think that if you just go with like the purely nihilistic perspective, you are destined to be miserable. But or you might just be so fuck, I cannot remember who it was. Might have been a Russian person, could have been a German person, some person somewhere. Yeah. Pretty sure it was a white guy, probably a white guy.
One of those Eastern European white guys.
Okay. Yeah, one of those. Says something about like how freedom is the scary thing, that the worst part is that we seem to be terrifyingly, overwhelmingly free. That if there isn't really like a purpose necessarily, if there isn't an essential meaning to who we are, if there isn't some kind of rule book that we have to live by for our conduct, that it is terrifying how free we are.
I mean, honestly, which is scarier, complete lack of choice or infinite possibility? Those are both kind of like daunting ideas, right? Like, I think both are scary in completely different ways. But
yeah, I mean, even like, bro, like seriously, like if I go to the toothpaste aisle and the toothpaste I usually get is not there, and I look at all the other toothpaste, it's like, oh God, like, whoa, what do I do? Like that one's extra fluoride, whitening, baking soda, mint, spearmint. Oh, that one's cinnamon. Like, I mean, even that's overwhelming.
I think
so. If you
just always go for bubblegum, dude.
If you look at that, you do what? But what?
Bubblegum flavored.
Isn't that like in like the? That's like on the far end, like at the very. But you are too tall to be looking at the bubblegum. It's at the bottom.
I've used the same toothpaste for at least like 25 years. I don't change, man.
Bro, please tell me that. Yeah, but what do you do when you go in there and it's not there?
I find a kid that's 7 and I follow him to the toothpaste aisle, and his mom holds him close and gives me a weird look, and I grab the toothpaste that he was going to get and I walk out of the store. I'm just kidding. I don't use toothpaste.
Maybe I should do that next time. So,
is the point though that you freak out when the right type of toothpaste isn't there?
I just got so derailed by the bubble gum. Yeah, okay, sorry. I just completely fucked up the podcast because of bubblegum toothpaste. Yeah, the point is that like just a tiny insignificant thing, that by itself overwhelms me for choice. So it's like in an existence with infinite possibilities, that is probably scarier. And the fact that you know, we've got like rule of law and admittedly some like, you know, Judeo-Christian ideas to sort of govern us to some degree. But when I think of like ethics and just like interpersonal interactions with people, you know, because I don't have some kind of rule book. It's like I've got complete freedom to figure out how that shit works for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary because it's like, well, what if I figure out the wrong thing?
True. Yeah. But it's also freeing because you're not just on a prescribed, okay, here is stick within these narrow lanes. This is what you must do. So, but yeah.
But it's also terrifying because someone's saying that you don't have to be stuck within these narrow lanes. Do whatever the fuck you want. I mean, it's not like, because to me, like, I don't necessarily personally find it to be that terrifying, but I can understand like that some people might find that sort of scary. And by the way, I think it was Sartre that said that. I kind of looked it up.
Yeah.
So, or however you say his name.
Dude, I think it's Sartre.
Have you seen the guy? This is completely off subject, but have you seen the guy on YouTube that has wrong pronunciations for stuff, telling you how to pronounce stuff?
Oh yes, yeah, they're hilarious. Yeah,
so funny.
Yeah, there's a bunch that are great.
It's like some Monty Python kind of shit.
I want to address what Michiru said in chat. If you don't believe religion in any form is quote unquote real, but you still respect it as a way for many people to find their path or meaning in life, and that doesn't necessarily make me a nihilist, right? Well, see, my understanding of existential nihilism, it does, because that's why I now say that I kind of fall into that camp, is what we talked about earlier, basically, is if you believe that life or existence does not have an inherent purpose, then that aligns with existential nihilism. So that's what I believe is there is no inherent purpose that we have in this life, but we are free to find our own purpose. Which I honestly don't believe that. As far as like free to find our own purpose, but I believe that we can end up finding a purpose, I guess is the better way to say, along with my real beliefs. But as long as you believe that there is no inherent purpose, that like basically the universe wasn't designed with this plan where, okay, here is what your life is meant to be, and here is the purpose or reason for your life, then I would say that is existential nihilism. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, because it seems like in the question there's a couple parts. That okay, so if you don't believe religion in any form is real, but you still respect it as a way for many people to find their yeah. So this is more. So outside of yourself, you may actually be okay with other people using that as a way to find some kind of meaning. But like Ty's saying, like if you yourself don't necessarily see an inherent meaning, then that kind of makes you a nihilist.
Well, honestly, I would argue that the people that follow those religions, they probably wouldn't word it as finding meaning for their life. They would think that they were born with that inherent purpose because of the deity or God that created what they believe created the universe, I would say. Probably.
Yeah, that was like the old kind of Greek idea that there was an essence to you, and then that essence determined what you were. So essence, then existence, and then that determines your purpose.
Yeah,
and it also feels like there's a little bit of moral question here at the end too. Like the whole idea that like it helps a lot of people, but it also hurts a lot of people when people use religion as justification to do wrong. There's actually like another idea. Like moral nihilism.
Yes.
It's like a meta ethical idea that pretty much any kind of ethical claims are just false.
Yeah, I didn't
nothing is morally good, nothing is morally right, wrong, bad, any of that stuff, and there's no actual moral truths. Like that's like an extreme viewpoint of nihilism.
See, I don't know what I believe. I don't know if I believe in objective moral truths.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in what we have determined works best for us to exist in communities.
Yeah,
like the ways to interact with each other and the ways to treat each other that is the least intrusive and the most beneficial and least likely to add to conflict in people's lives.
But that is strictly subjective though, right? I mean, like that's not like an objective moral truth. That's just Yeah, I don't know. I need to.
Well, no, it is objective because you can observe outside of yourself which things work the best in a group of people as a community. Like what standards of behavior work the best that are least harmful. But you have to actually determine like what standards you want to live by, I guess. To determine well,
yeah, but it actually requires observers to even make that true, right? So like it's all like part of it is almost subjective too. Like yeah, I get where you're coming from, that there's an objective nature to it, but it also like it is not something that stands separate from it being subjectively observed.
I mean, I'll put it to you this way. Let's say we live in a town where we have no communication with the outside world. There's no transportation, and there is a blacksmith who I rely on to make my tools so I can farm. And then there's I don't know what you call someone that runs a mill, but there's a mill and there's a person that runs the mill who I rely on to grind my corn.
Yeah.
And then there's a person who has a well or a watering hole who I rely on to give me water so I can make cornbread from the cornmeal. And the person at the mill relies on me for bartering with them for my corn. If the person at the mill pisses me off, and so does the blacksmith, and so does the guy with the watering hole, and I want to kill them all, well, then now I'm just some jackass with some corn.
Yeah, exactly.
So like to me, like I think that's like you can make a logical argument for that being detrimental to my survival.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
So I think that in some ways you don't necessarily, I don't think that has to be an individual determining that is only works for them within themselves. I mean, it's pretty obvious that anybody looking at that would call that like, and it's just practical. It's not necessarily good, evil. It's just practical. It's like what works. Because I was having a conversation with someone recently about the whole idea of evil being an invention that had to happen when we decided we wanted to live together.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like you were just pointing out, like your ideas of, just killing everyone else that supply chain was based on is technically evil, right? But I mean, it's like it's only evil, but because it's in the context of that, like, all right, well, society is going to get fucked up if this happens. That is like, I mean, that's kind of what evil is, right? Is like it's going against the society that we've set up, I guess. Like
anything that potentially screws up the codependent community of individuals, like you throw a big wrench in it if you decide to get rid of one of them because you don't like them or they pissed you off one time.
Yeah. That's I don't know. I like what Michiru had to say there, though. It's I see. Another thing is like I feel I'm getting the feeling from reading some of your comments that it's like, were you under the impression that nihilism is a strictly negative thing? Because I feel like that's what I came across a lot while researching this. Is there was like multiple videos or things that people had written where they were like trying to point out that it's not this philosophical boogeyman that a lot of people kind of make it out to be, where it's like it's almost like if you hear the term nihilistic or nihilism, that it's like, oh well, that's that's bad. But it's like, well, if you really like if you look at it objectively, like like we pointed out, taken to the extreme, taken to 100% true, there is a chance that it can be bad and that it can lead you to behave in what we would consider bad ways. But it's like just the definition on itself doesn't seem to be inherently bad.
Yeah, it's also super broad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places where it kind of applies, and if you add another word to the beginning or the end of it, then it can mean something a little bit different.
Is it bad that I really want Superman's cousin instead of Supergirl to be super broad?
I just spit on my microphone.
Just when you said that was like the first thing that I pictured. I don't know why. That I'm such a bad person. Jesus.
I can't take you anywhere. Oh God, that's so gross. Sorry, I hope my mic wasn't making weird noises while I cleaned it off.
It was just ASMR for a second.
Like that's what you got from that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
But no, it is a very broad term, and like we're saying that, yeah, there are multiple different schools within it, and yeah.
And I think that when people think of it as being a bad thing, it's when the idea. Well, here, I'll just read this verbatim.
Okay.
When you talk about nihilism as being the belief that not only is there no intrinsic meaning in the universe, but it is also pointless to try to construct our own as a substitute. Stop. Done.
Mm-hmm.
That by itself, I think, is pretty bad.
Who wrote that? Where did that come from?
Just let me see what website this is. It's on it's just an editorial.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's just an editorial where I like tried to find words someone else put together that kind of fit my definition too.
Mm-hmm.
So I just tried to find a more eloquent person who could kind of say the same thing I was thinking in a way that wasn't quite as stupid.
Yeah.
It's on here. I can even give you a link to it. I can put a link in the chat if you want here on Twitch.
Yeah, drop that link in chat.
It's kind of fun. A little bit of linkage here. So I think that when you stop at that and like don't go any further, don't pursue anything else, don't attempt to find any other kind of meaning or purpose for yourself, then I think that that's bad, because it in many ways just kind of removes responsibility or removes any kind of effort or need for anything. And chiefly you'll find well, most of the religious people I know are Christians, but chiefly you'll hear Christians, they'll get upset about that because there is a purpose, and that is God.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that is sacrilege, because like there is a purpose for you. You just need to acknowledge that God has one for you. And if you acknowledge that, then you'll find it, and blah, 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 blah. When in reality, you're just finding your own purpose and convincing yourself it's a God.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe, you know, they could be right. They could be right. I'm
just kidding.
I have to admit that I could be wrong, but
I don't think religion is stupid. I'm just, yeah.
So we do, it does seem like we do both agree. And I think because of us both having like atheistic or agnostic, which I think they're two different things, but having an agnostic belief system, I think we both do agree that there is not like an intrinsic meaning that life has, right?
Yeah, I think that we agree on that. Yeah. But the point you made earlier that we can't necessarily discern whether or not there's a purpose, that's probably true. But in this case, we're choosing to make the most likely assumption, or not assumption, the most likely assessment, which is there isn't really an intrinsic meaning.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that we agree on that.
Yeah. If it, like, that's kind of where I go with a lot of things, is like, if it's unknowable or it feels unknowable, I'm going to behave or believe in the way that evidence points to. And with with an extraordinary claim like that, I would argue that it would require extraordinary evidence for me to believe it. So in the light of the lack of that evidence, I'm not going to believe it. It's like I think that's basically how I get to my belief system from there.
Yeah, same.
Which I'm always like irritated by people that it's like, oh, show me the evidence that God doesn't exist. It's like, I don't think that's how the onus of proof works here, but that's fine. But yeah, so I'm not entirely convinced that the lack of inherent belief needs to mean that all of existence is senseless or empty. I do think that it gives you the opportunity to go in a positive sense and find your own purpose or find your own meaning. You do have a great point though, that a lot of people may stop at just there's no inherent meaning, so there's no reason to look further, or no reason to try to find one. I don't know what percentage that would be. I'd love to do like a nihilism poll. That would be great if we could like poll all of the nihilists and find like which ones maybe fall on the optimistic side or which ones don't.
I think that you'll find that what I would call, I guess, I don't know what other term to use other than, I think that there's philosophically weak individuals who will use that as an excuse to do what they want. A lot of people will use it as an excuse for hedonism because it doesn't really matter. I mean, fuck. I mean, Rick from Rick and Morty is a fine example of that. I mean, who gets out of their freaking interdimensional spaceship and like 16 cans of beer falls out? I mean, come on, bro.
Well, I think that I think people do that a lot with it. Even when you said it, it just reminded me of exactly the conversation we were just touching on with like religious people, where they will take a belief that they have inside and find one particular passage that mirrors that belief and cling onto that. You know what I mean? Like the reason why they'll quote whatever, I forget which book it is. It's one of the Torah, or one of the books from the Torah, but where it says like man shall not lay with another man, that is an abomination or whatever. They'll quote that.
That one's a page turner.
Yeah, well,
Leviticus, man.
Is it Leviticus?
Everybody
okay,
loves Leviticus.
But they'll quote that because it aligns with a belief they have inside, but none of the other rules that are around it. You know what I mean? So it's obviously not. It's not the book that is giving them that belief. It's like, well, no, hold on. You're actually just homophobic, and you're trying to cling to this one line to strengthen that, rather than actually caring what that book is saying. But yeah.
Yeah, they need to do it live.
Yeah.
they need to man up and do it live.
True. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I see the parallel that you're drawing is that someone will take the idea of because you don't even, there's a lot of people that believe this, that there is really no inherent meaning or purpose to existence. But they've never heard the term nihilism ever. Exactly. But then they'll take that idea to be like, well, it doesn't matter what I do. Let's go get real drunk and, fuck that stop sign to death. Well,
that is just what just what the big dog 79 said in chat. There is no God, no heaven or hell, so screw it. There can be no right or wrong. See, that's like, so that's taking it one step too far.
Yeah, that would be like a mixture of pure nihilism and then also the moral nihilism.
Yes, yeah.
So I would actually say that I'm sorry, big dog, but I would actually say that is like, there's just, See, that is the reason why people say nihilism is a bad thing, is because of sort of ideas like that. I'm assuming he's probably just being devil's advocate here.
I would assume so, yeah.
Yeah. So,
but that is you can get there with that belief system if you're not careful, right? I mean, that's what we were pointing out earlier, is like taken to the extreme, you can kind of argue yourself to believe that that's actually true and that nothing matters. Which I don't know how to defend against that, because like I'm saying, like I kind of align with the major tenets of this belief system, but I don't think it necessarily has to go to that level, but I don't know how to make that point.
Oh.
I mean, other than like, I guess what I was saying earlier, where you have to recognize that your own personal beliefs are your personal beliefs, and that it's not fair to extend those to others no matter what you believe. So even if you believe that all life is meaningless, all life has no value, you have to respect that other humans may not believe that, and you could be wrong, and that your freedom doesn't have the right to infringe on theirs.
Yeah, and you have autonomy to, if you truly believe that life is meaningless, you have the autonomy, and we're not encouraging this, by the way. This is just philosophical argument that you have the autonomy to take your own if you truly believe that it's not worth anything. And like I said, we're not encouraging this behavior. If you're having thoughts like that, please go find some help. Fuck it, message one of us. We'll talk to you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But you don't. Honestly, bro, like a lot of it, like it's the mass shooting suicide thing. Because it's like, I'm going to wreak as much havoc on the rest of existence as I can before I destroy myself. That's just like, that's the ultimate in pushing that belief on someone else.
It is, but on the other side of it, it's almost the opposite.
He's being devil's advocate for mass shooting.
Well, no, I'm just saying it's almost not nihilistic, because if you actually believe that none of it mattered, why would you even do that? You know what I mean? Like you've got to believe that that it matters to some degree, or that those actions are pointless, right? Like whether or not you believe that it's eventually going to not matter once everyone dies and everything, but you get what I'm saying? Like you believe that your actions are having some sort of consequence, and I feel like that's the reason why that's done. I'm trying to defend nihilism. You're trying to put all the mass shooters in my camp, and I'm trying to take them out of it.
No, I mean, I'm taking it to like the absolute extreme.
Yeah.
Where it's like everything is. And then, this is one of my favorite things about it. We end up in like a philosophical quandary, and that's why these are the subjects that are the most fun to talk about for people that enjoy philosophies, because we can sit here and talk about this shit like forever.
Well, and like I talked about in when we were texting, it's like this isn't something that's solved. It's not like, it's still a philosophical debate whether or not, it's not just objectively true that nihilism is a bad set of beliefs to have and you shouldn't have that. It's like there's a reason why it's up for debate versus like solved things are not that fun to talk about. If we were to talk about how many planets there are in our solar system, it's a really short conversation. We know how many there are, and that's all we can really talk about, versus things that are actually unknown and possibly unknowable. It's fun to just pick apart and unpack the entire conversation, because we know that we're not going to get to this final, oh shit, here's the actual truth, here's the actual answer, like, we're done now, let's pack up and go home. Like,
yeah. And the idea is, for this at least, it's a personal sort of idea, personal determination of belief. And as you acquire more information and more understanding, that idea and that belief can always change.
Yes.
So I think that it's another thing I think that we both can definitely agree on here is that having some idea of some sort of purpose is generally beneficial for pretty much everyone.
Yeah, I would argue almost necessary. Yeah,
because it's like the whole idea of like, yeah, I hope I can just win the freaking lottery, quit my job, and then feel miserable and bored with shitloads of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, usually people end up blowing all the money anyway when they win the lottery.
Unfortunately, yeah, it does kind of happen that
Did we seriously have someone in chat invoke the flat Earth?
I'm pretty sure they're a real flat earther too. Yeah, dude, that is a conversation I do actually want to have. I am down for the flat.
I just added my list. I don't talk about ransomware, Donald Trump, or flat Earth. That's my new addition to that list.
Dude, I think it's a fun conversation to have, because
you can have a guest and promote me to viewer for that one.
I do think that it's.
I just don't know. Like, I'll just sit and listen to you. I've got nothing to add to it. Like, what do we?
I think it's interesting because if you do it well enough, you can completely defend that position correctly, and you can make someone look like an idiot that is arguing that the Earth is round, because there is enough in that worldview that it actually can contradict it. Yeah, it's interesting. But
one of our friends who's not actually logged in, who's watching right now, just sent me a text and asked me, how did the flat earthers figure out how to get online? Yeah, but there are ways that, like, if the individual that you're talking to isn't knowledgeable enough about the subject matter, that there's a lot of ways where you can sort of, and it's interesting that the theories and the ideas about how the reality of things is, which is the reason why the Earth is flat, they're quite odd, I think, if you looked at them.
And they are 100% not nihilistic, because it requires there to be a plan for the universe, right? Like,
on the surface, those things seem like they might be legit. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're nihilistic. Maybe not. Maybe they're not nihilistic. I don't know.
Well, everything I've seen from someone who believes in a flat Earth is basically like the universe was designed for us.
Misinterpretation of the creation myth and the Christian Bible.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Well, which in itself like means that there is a purpose, right? Like, it's like you were like, literally our planet was put here as the only flat one by a god. Like, we're here for a purpose. Like, that is like almost the complete opposite of nihilism. Like, they believe there's a very intrinsic purpose and meaning to everything
that creates a meaning for your existence. I mean, like, I remember I don't know who I was listening to or what I was reading, but it was the idea about like the stars. Like, they were put there, and there are these little tiny points that are sort of, there on this big blanket of darkness. And then, wait, what? They're fucking balls of burning gas? Oh, shit. fuck,
Yeah.
like I thought they were here to amuse us. Because that's one of the reasons why, if you listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about why he doesn't believe the universe has a creator, is because he can't discern that there's a purpose to it.
Yeah.
But then the point you made earlier about us not necessarily being able to comprehend whether or not there really is a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
I think that if there actually is, if we ever really figured it out, that's an if there is, that it would probably blow everyone's minds to the point where like we wouldn't even be able to fathom it in some very strange fashion. It's something that no fantasy, no science fiction writer, no religion could have ever dreamed up.
Yeah, something like way beyond. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that would make the most sense to me, if the purpose was simply to experience, if the universe wanted to subjectively experience itself, it could create physical life, evolve to a point where there are conscious beings that are able to explore the universe itself and be its own way to experience itself, right?
Yeah,
like that to me is like the closest, like the most logical like purpose that the universe could have. But
there was a video on, I think it was on Kurzgesagt, I always say the name wrong, where he talks about how we can think of ourselves as the thinking, feeling part of the universe. And that's the thing that we are, that if we're, I think it was is there a life on other planets or something like that, that if we're it, then we're the thinking, feeling part of it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cooler.
Yeah.
The scene in I think it was the first Men in Black film, where it zooms out of our solar system and then continues to zoom out, and then our solar system is a marble.
Yep.
And our galaxy, sorry, is a marble, and a giant alien gets it out and like plays marbles with it. Or it's entirely possible that if you look at well, I don't know for sure, but theoretically, I think the math works out that we could our entire universe could actually exist on the edge of an event horizon of a black hole.
Yeah.
And because time is so distorted at this point that we're like right there.
Well, that is like one of the main tenets of like the holographic principle, is like the way that information exists in our universe, it could actually be projected from a 2D surface. Even though we experience this third dimensional reality, it's actually possible that it's all it's an illusion created from 2-dimensional mapping, which is required if it was on the event horizon of another black hole. Yeah.
I've never heard that, but you need to send me your entire YouTube history and all of your audiobooks. And dude, it's YouTube, really?
There's a lot of questionable stuff I've watched on YouTube.
Oh jeez.
Well, Michiru, we will be talking about it, I guess, in an upcoming episode. But I mean, the two main belief systems are either determinism or free will, and I believe that the universe is 100% deterministic. I don't think that free will actually exists. I believe we have the illusion of free will. We feel like we're making choices, but I think that it's all determined.
I heard a really great argument for free will, which is if it walks like free will and it quacks like free will, it's free will.
Possibly, yeah.
So solid argument.
That is a solid argument. Yeah, so
I feel like we've taken a lot of tangents on this one, but it's been fun.
It's been a great one. Let's get back to the point at the end. Do you have any closing statements about nihilism?
Dude, I want to end it with just a quote.
A quote? Okay.
Yeah, this is actually from Rick and Morty. This is something that Morty says to his sister Summer.
As long as you weren't ending it with a Jerry quote, we're fine.
Oh God, no. So to avoid spoilers, I'm not going to say the context of it, but it's an episode of Rick and Morty. Morty says this to his sister Summer: "Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's going to die. Come watch TV."
That's actually perfect. Yeah, I can't do any better than that. We're gonna end with that. We've reached the end of another episode of the Metacast podcast. If you guys are watching this on YouTube and you enjoy the conversation, hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with what we're doing here, and comment below and let us know not only your opinions on nihilism, but anything we got wrong, anything you feel like we got right. I'd love to have a bigger discussion about this. If you're interested in further taking part in the conversation, or even joining us as a guest on a future episode, join our Discord. The link is in the description below. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode live Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylaTV. And thank you guys for listening. I hope everyone has a great week.